Welcome back to the Gospel Narrative Podcast. Today we have on Fred. Fred, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Awesome.
So, Fred, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So my name's Fred. I am 21. I grew up overseas in Papua New Guinea. My parents work there as missionaries, and they serve with Mission Aviation Fellowship, with his MAF. And yeah, I grew up there my whole life. Ever since I was born, I just kind of lived there with my parents. And yeah, I grew up in a small town, probably population a little bit smaller than Lynchburg, but yeah, I mean, it was home. It was home, and it was out in the middle of the Pacific. Yeah, really enjoyed it. It was a good, beautiful place.
What was it like growing up there in Papua New Guinea?
Everything was it was very simple, dude. If I had one way of putting it, it's simple. People were just very friendly. People very time-based people. Not time-based, but I would say just relationally based people. Yeah, just so different from here. Food-wise, food was great. Everything was organically grown. We never had anything from the store except if it was like, meat and stuff like that. But really healthy living. Very simple. I think we grew up in like a middle-class suburban area, so not nothing too bad there, but definitely way, way different from what my friends have had growing up here in the U.S. It was just, a whole different lifestyle over there. Yeah, so I've been in the church since I was born, basically. Ever since I can remember, we're always a family that was there every Sunday, never missed a day of church. Yeah, I mean, my grandfather was a church planter, planted some churches, and so my dad kind of grew up doing that, and so we just had really close ties with the church. My whole life, I grew up in a Christian family, obviously, and so, Christianity to me and religion were kind of just like, okay, I was born into this, so, just growing up, went to a small Christian school, memorized the Bible verse, I knew all the right things to say, all the right things to do, but I just, as a kid, I just really didn't want to commit to something 100% till I knew, like, okay, like, I've done my research, I've looked into stuff, like, this is it, like, I want to believe in this, I want to do this, and so that was kind of the way it was for me. A lot of people actually in my community, most kids there kind of, when they were younger, they were saved at, age of 6, 4, all that sort of stuff, and I kind of wasn't the same as everybody else, so I got saved at the age of 12, actually, so I can remember the events that led up to that. I go to Sunday school and listen to about, people talk about Jesus, and I knew that he was, God's son and all that. But I was like, no, I still got to, do more, thinking on my own and all that type of stuff just to figure it out. And so one summer, we went to visit my great-grandmother who lives on the coast. So we went down there, we were with family for, 2 weeks or so, and we were driving back up. And in New Guinea, the roads are they can get really bad because, they're not well maintained and stuff. So there's like a lot of potholes on the highways and stuff like that. So, we're driving back. We're in Toyota Hilux, which is similar to like a Tacoma. And the car was really full, in fact. So I told my dad, I'm like, I'll just throw a mattress in the back and, lay down. Because, in New Guinea, nobody's really keeping an eye on what's going on. Cops aren't too, strict on the highway rules and all that. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna just lay in the back. So we were halfway through the trip, and then my dad gets a work call on the road, and he answers it and is talking while he's driving, and then he hangs up, puts it down. Seconds before that, there was a big pothole on the road, and this big semi is just coming right at us. He's trying to avoid the pothole, doesn't go out of his way, so my dad pulls off the road, and the car basically tips. And we get rolled over, and I was in the back with all the luggage, so I got hit in the head, and I was gone. Like, I was out for like 5 minutes. And I just wake up to, the car just being, on all four wheels. Thank God, nothing went wrong. We were all safe, and it was a pretty shocking drive for my family. We had a friend who was coming along behind us, helped us get the car back onto the road, and then we changed the tires and stuff because of the pothole impact. But when we went back to our little town the next day, we went to church, and I was going through so much like shock at the time, and then in that moment, I went to Sunday school. In that moment, the Sunday school teacher was like, "Yo, if anybody, wants to give their life to Christ today, just everybody put heads down, eyes closed, hands up." And I just really felt, that decision to like, okay, I just realized that moment through two things, like life is short, and in a minute everything can be gone. And then B, I was like, you know what? If I'm gonna die going out believing in, Jesus. So that's kind of when I gave my life to Christ.
What has life been like after that decision?
Um, I want to say it's just been all cloud nine and flowing on smooth ocean, but it's just been great, but it's also been like tough, if that's the right word to say. So I got saved at 12, and so for me, after I got saved, I was like, okay, I'm saved. I believe in Jesus, and I know I'm going to heaven, but after that, it was kind of just like, okay, I'm saved, but I'm not gonna take my faith seriously. So, from that point forward, I just like it was just kind of like going with the flow. I would go to church, read my Bible, do devotions, all the right stuff. Like I said, knew all the right things to say. And then at the same time, I was just going through a big struggle. So I got exposed to porn, 7th grade. And that was probably one of the hardest challenges I've ever had to face in my life as a guy. Because, outside on the outward, I was a good student, got some, pretty decent grades. I was on the sports team, I was the team captain for soccer for a little bit. And all the while I was just, bro, I was suffering with porn underneath. Nobody knew. As soon as I went back to, my house, closed the doors, that was it. Went back to the dorm, that was it. And it was just the biggest struggle because I was like, dude, like I know I'm a good person. I know like I'm a good Christian. And, I was listening to the lies the devil was feeding me. He's like, oh, you know what? It's okay. The Lord's just going to forgive you. It's just, just one more watch, one more click. And it's, and that just kept going for me from about 7th grade up until the 9th grade. And it was just, I went to this one youth group and the guy was just talking about porn, how we need to get rid of it and cut it from the roots. And so, I decided that moment that I wanted to change. So 10th grade started fresh, I came back after summer. And it was good because I hadn't done anything or anything like that. And then I went back towards, occasionally suffering it. But, 11th grade, by the grace of God, I started going through this men's, discipleship group. And that really helped me. I had brothers who were like, because I thought I was the only one for the longest time, dude. And I think that's the lie the devil traps us in. It's like, oh, you're the only one dealing with this. But no, there's this community of guys around us who's also struggling with the same thing. So that's one thing, probably one of the biggest obstacles I've had to face as a believer. And then, but through it all, I just found the grace of God, bro. That's probably been the biggest thing for me in these 21 years of life that I just remembered is just God's grace. I'm just thankful that no matter, how much we do, how far we can stray away from God, He's always there to be like, I still love you and I want to call you back. And so, yeah, that's one of the biggest things I've dealt with since, becoming Christian. But then also just, after that, 11th grade, 12th grade, COVID happened during the whole time, 2019, 2021. Class graduates, and I moved to the U.S. So that was a big, bro, what is this? Big transition for me. So I went from living on this tiny island to, going from jungle, deep jungle stuff, going to little town, know everybody, to big city, urban jungle. And so I remember my first year, 6 months to year in the U.S. as a freshman in college, big struggle for me. Dealt with a lot of depression, and just kind of, again, not really making my faith my own, type of just going with the flow, kind of okay, I'm going to all these classes. I'd have New Testament survey, Old Testament survey, all this, Theo, all that type of stuff. But on the underneath, I was still struggling, And I was at Moody Bible Institute at the time, my freshman year. I did my freshman year there, and then sophomore year I transferred to Liberty. And when I was at Moody, it was a very, I would say, um, they were a bit stricter from like what we have here, and so it kind of just kept me on a loop, or not on a loop, but a leash, I would say. Kind of like it was in a way it was better for me. But I transferred here, sophomore, new guy in school, new dorm. I was just like, it's a different start. Uh, and I I'm an extrovert naturally, so I'll be talking to everybody. If you're ever in like Starbucks, you just see me there all the time, just making little talk and stuff like that. So I started in my freshman year. Sorry, soft. But when I transferred here, I while I was at Moody, I was pursuing the degree of being a pilot. And I wanted to use that for missions and stuff. So I transferred here still with pursuing aviation, and at the same time, I heard about the soccer team, and I was like, okay, like I played soccer all throughout high school, and I was like, I can definitely be on the soccer team and all that type of stuff. So um, I started getting to know the guys, some of the other athletes and stuff, and then um, eventually that goes south for me. So I'm like, okay, I want to be cool, want to hang out with these guys, I want to make the team. So I started going to parties, started drinking, um, started vaping. Bro, it was while I would pull up to school, like I said, kind of just going with the flow, being like, I'm a good Christian, I know the answers, know this, that. Pull up to church, on the Sunday, and for me it was just kind of going with the flow. And I, as we went, I just felt, I think the Lord was convicting me every time, because I went to church hungover, and it was so bad. And some days I just didn't go to church. And for somebody who has grown up in the church and kind of just been through all that, in my heart I knew it was wrong, and also, but then also like the spirit, as believers we have the spirit of God, and it was just really, I think the spirit was convicting me. And it's funny because I feel like oftentimes believers, we know the right things, whether it's with sin in our lives, or with relationships, or with finances or stuff, and we can listen to what the spirit's saying, and then we'd be like, you know what, I like what you're saying, but I'm gonna do my thing for a little bit, and then eventually, I'm gonna go back to the eventually, Lord. And we kind of put the Lord in, like, okay, Lord, wait, let me do my thing, let me have my fun, and then later I'll go back to that. So you know August through end of October, actually. Okay, so wow, that's crazy, because it was actually this time a year ago. So I stopped going to parties and stuff. So it all happened after this one party. I went and basically, just, I went to party. I was like the hype man, dude. I started hyping people up. Bro, I got mad drunk that night. And we, I just remember waking up the next morning, just totally blacked out, just like not knowing where I was. Um, and it was in that moment, bro, I just remember, I can just feel the Lord reaching down to me, and it was kind of like the story of the prodigal son, how he went out and, just wasted his money and all that type of stuff. And then going back to the Father, I just felt the Lord reach down to me in that moment when I was all alone and questioning myself, questioning life, questioning, my faith. It was in that moment where I felt the Lord reach through to me and pull me out of that. And so the next morning, I go to church, repent, and honestly, from that moment, in November, before Thanksgiving break last year, from that moment on, it's just been a continual like upward growth. And for me, my faith has become so much realer because, like, I just like in that moment when I felt empty and alone and felt like I had nobody, the Lord reached me and reminded me that He was there and He's always been there. And like I said again, bro, this past couple of years, it's been this constant theme of grace, grace, grace. And bro, I'm just so thankful, to the Lord about just how much grace He has abounding for us, because the amount of times that you and me and like everybody else messes up, if the Lord didn't have His grace, bro, we'd be done for. we'd be in hell by now because of all that. But dude, the Lord's just so good. Um, and he's just man, he's just been so good for me. And I've just learned to depend on him more and more and more. And the more and more I depend on him and grow closer to him in life, the more and more I start to worry less and less about all these earthly things, all these worldly things. And the Lord's just continue to enable me to grow in that, and also grow in my love for him. And then through that, being able to love other people. Um, and I think one of the greatest things with that and just growing has been the community around me. And I would definitely just say just like community, especially in college, is so important for you because that community is going to be the people that influence you. And there's this saying, I think it's about like how you are who you surround yourself with. And yeah, one thing that I've learned since I rededicated my life to the Lord was just community is very important. And if you're not surrounding yourself with good, important, godly people in your life, it's like you're not gonna go in the right way. But if you surround yourself with godly people and just like people can pour into you consistently and keep uplifting you and also calling you out when there's need for it, it's like such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, praise God. I mean, thank God there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And like we are new creations, new men every day. And even though we might have like made mistakes in the past, like myself included, like that past no longer bounds us to hell because we are in Jesus. And through the renewal of our mind, he's changing us to be a different person each day. It's the heart transformation that he seeks after, each day by day, looking more like him. But thank you for sharing your story. I really appreciate that. Looking back to, you mentioned as a young kid dealing with the issues of pornography. I know other men and myself have struggled with that because it's such a pervasive issue for young men because it grapples our minds and destroys our soul. What are some ways that you think we as young men can get accountability and just have victory in that area of life?
Um, I would say the first and foremost, the biggest thing is just to identify the sin of porn and just being like, Lord, I'm dealing with this. I'm suffering with this sin, and just um confession. Confession is probably the biggest thing. When you admit, like, I mean, even the Bible talks about the power of the mouth, and you know, confession. I would just say is the biggest thing that's probably so important that I think many men fail to do because as somebody who struggled with it, I can look back and think in times where I was just like, you know what, it's okay. The Lord's still gonna forgive me. Instead of saying like, okay, it's sin, and I'm sinning against the Lord and myself. So I think confession and just admitting to that sin is probably one of the biggest, most important steps you can take. And then also, I would say your sins you're struggling with is probably not something you want to share with every single person. I mean, obviously, like your close friends and stuff, but also just have somebody who you can be accountable with. And I think the accountability partner is such an important thing for men who are struggling with that because just like you need somebody who you can just talk to, and sometimes that person isn't going to be as much as you want it to be, somebody close to you, like your family member or something. Sometimes it's not going to be that, and sometimes you're just not going to need that. You need somebody who you can go to, anytime, anywhere, and just be like, bro, I messed up again, or bro, like I'm dealing with this or that. Um, yeah, and yeah, like I said, dude, confession and like being able to confess that to somebody, because I know so many men who are dealing with it and then want to say something, but they're just like, oh, whoa, maybe I'm the only one dealing with it. But it's like, no, dude, it's like it's a sin that I'm pretty sure all men deal with, and like I have not met a single guy in my Christian walk who has, and there are exceptions, but who have not dealt with the sin of like porn, and I think it's just such a big issue in this generation, this day and age, where you're so easily able to access that type of stuff, and I think it's an issue that we as Christians and we as the church and the body of Christ need to be made. We need to be making people more aware of me, like, hey, like people deal with this and it's okay, like, because I think as a church, and people of and followers of Christ, I think it's up to us to say, hey, listen, like, everybody deals with this. There's no sin which is new to men that God has. God has, like, even Jesus came to earth, and he was there, and it might not have been like porn specifically, but he dealt with sins like that we have dealt with. Everybody's dealt with. So I think as believers, it's important for us. When people in the church or who are followers of Christ that we know come out and confess these things, I think it's important for us as believers to go like, okay, I'm here for you, and I'm here to support you. And I think I'm not saying that every church does this or every person does, but I've known people who have, like, when people have come on and been like, bro, I'm struggling with this. People, it's not being taken seriously, and people are, oh, that's crazy, bro. Like, uplifting people and supporting them in the most godly way. I think sometimes as people, our brain immediately goes to, like, oh, that's so bad. Like, why would you do that? And then shunning people. But instead, as followers of Christ, should be like, I totally get it, and I'm here for you. And I think there needs to be more of that, like,
Yeah.
accountability.
Absolutely. Kind of taking another look at your own story, you transitioned from living in Papua New Guinea to deciding to go to Moody Bible Institute. What was the decision to go to Bible Institute like? Like, what went into that decision?
So I knew I wanted to be, a pilot for life. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but my dad started off as like a airplane mechanic, and that kind of sprouted the interest for aviation in my life. What's a way I can use my interest, what I like, what I love, to spread the gospel, And I looked online. I looked at different schools. I looked at Embry-Riddle. I looked at Liberty. I looked at Moody, and I really liked what Moody had. When I was there as a freshman, before I transferred to Liberty, and so I knew from high school I knew I wanted a good biblical education, and I wanted to be familiar with the stuff. And a lot of my friends were going to Bible school, but most of the Bible schools that they were going to didn't offer aviation training. And so when I was looking for schools, I was like, okay, I want to get biblical teachings in my life that will enable ministry to people, but then also aviation training, which will help me to do my job as like a pilot. So yeah, that's kind of what led to Moody. I was there for a year, and then didn't really fit in. Didn't really, it was a good place. Nothing against them; they're great people. Good school, and I just didn't really fit in. So then I transferred to Liberty, and yeah, just really grown since I've been here. So
Yeah, absolutely. What's something that God's been teaching you in your walk recently with Him?
wow. Yeah, recently it's been just abiding in Him. Um, Shoot, wow. There's just been, this past 2 semesters of college for me has just been really rebuilding a lot of, a lot around me, ever since, transitioning from that whole lifestyle of partying and, all that drinking, all that type of stuff to, living for Christ fully. And I'm not gonna lie, it's been tough because I've had to say, there's friends that I was friends with, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna distance myself from you a little bit, and then losing those friends, and then, even though I've lost friends, God's just been faithful to provide new people for me. But like I said earlier, I'm an extrovert and I love hanging out with people. And I think one thing that God's just been teaching me is that, people are people. At the end of the day, they're, people are people are not going to fulfill you as a person. And that's probably why I say abiding, because God's just been teaching me, like, hey, listen, I love that you have community. I love all that, but you need to learn to rely on me for everything. And for me, it's just been like, there's times this semester I've been like, okay, I need to just take, I need to fast from people and just continue, read my word and be with God. And I think that's great because, people, one thing I've learned in life is that people are going to fail you, and, friends are going to fail you, family's going to fail you, but one person who never fails you is God. He's always, he talks about it in like, what's it, Isaiah? I knew you before you were formed, in the secrets, in the quiet place. And then, bro, it's like, this is somebody who made you. He knows your entire most inner being. He knows, everything about you. And it's like, it's like your relationship with your earthly father, Like, I want to be close to my earthly father. I want to grow with him. And, if I want that from my earthly father, I should also be wanting the same thing with, my Heavenly Father, the person who made me, the creator of the world. And I think that, in today's society, um, I know I've struggled, but a lot of people definitely struggle with um, image, because you have social media and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, you got to be like this, or you got to be like that person, or look what this person's doing with their life. And people are like, find themselves rooted in so much about what people think and their identity with other people, that they forget to think about, okay, well, who am I in Christ, and who has God made me to be, and like, how am I gonna abide in Him and then thrive in Him and share Him with the world, and with my life? How are people gonna see God through me? And I think that's the biggest thing that that God's been teaching me this semester, is just abiding in Him and being content with Him. Whether that's with finances, whether that's with school, with relationships, with friendships. It's just abiding in Him and being content with Him, and just learning to love Him and placing Him above everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked what you said about, people like can't fulfill you. In like our lives, we look to people, mom and dad, friends, to fill this void we have in our heart.
Yeah.
The need to be fully known and loved. And that need tangibly is met by a lot of our parents and by friends. But like, it's not till we fully know that need is filled by God that we're able to walk in freedom and enjoy those relationships, like friendship. Because if I put pressure on a friendship to fill my divine need to be known and loved, there's going to be strain on that relationship, because I'm looking to them to fill a certain need. But if I have that need fully met in God, I can freely enjoy those relationships. It's even something I've been learning too in my own walk with God, not being reliant on necessarily a friend group or individuals to like fill that need to be known, but because my Father knows me, He doesn't just know me, He likes me. My Father, in the same way that my earthly father knows and likes Him, I have that relationship with Him where we get to know one another. It's so powerful. I love what you said about that.
And I cannot stress how just abiding in Him has enabled me to love on other people. And because like, bro, God is love, and God should be your first love. And learning what love is through God, and then being able to share that with other people, it's just such a beautiful thing, because you do it in a way that is like, you're not doing it in your own way or your own strength. And it's like, when you do it, it's just something that just kind of flows. You're not putting any effort into it, and it's just such a beautiful thing when we're just able to do that and show the love of Christ to other people through abiding, I guess.
Well, Fred, thanks so much for taking the time to come down and share your story. I know I appreciate it, and the viewers appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, thank you guys for listening to the Gospel Narrative Podcast, where we share stories of grace and redemption. We'll see you guys next time.